Pentra.
P-E-N-T-R-E-A-T-H.
Would it be best for Gareth to speak first? Or
Maybe.
Yes.
Hello again, Commissioners. Now we have Mr Gareth Holder of Redlock Horticulture Limited, who will address you. His evidence is appendixed to Ms Sand's evidence, and it is the first one in the grower's statements, which would be page 36.
Good morning. Obviously my name's Gareth Holder. I'm from Redlock Horticulture. We're a small vegetable growing operation based here on the Heretaunga Plains. My wife and I established the business in 2009, and to date we grow around approximately 150 hectares of fresh market leafy green salads for numerous supermarket chains throughout New Zealand. We're also a supplier to McCain's Foods locally here in Hawke's Bay. We also export squash to Japan and Korea. And also, as part of our crop rotation, we use arable crops, including maize and other cereals. I'm also Vice Chair for the Hawke's Bay Vegetable Growers Association. Big thing that I really wanted to talk about is just the personal journey, the challenges that we have in growing here or anywhere, but here in Hawke's Bay, but also the future sustainability of what we do, which includes looking after the land, the soil, and for myself and future generations as well. So some of the things that we implement are around soil sustainability, and we've been involved with numerous programs, including the use of a lot more of minimum tillage, so around reducing soil movement, holding on to nutrients, producing good quality crops, good yields with reduced inputs. That includes water as well. So for us, that's seen significant capital expenditure in irrigation, the form of irrigation, how it's applied, timing, and monitoring of that application as well. So we use a lot of new technology. We're always looking for new technology to try and reduce our inputs. Obviously, that helps our bottom line, but we also are very conscious of the environmental impact of overuse and reducing any chances of nutrient loss and soil sediment loss as well. Alongside that, we've got significant pressure as vegetable producers in Hawke's Bay. The land, we're not growing any more land, so and there's certainly a large amount of urban and lifestyle growth within the Hawke's Bay region. So that's put pressure on us, and also we've seen a very significant increase in land value and also land lease value. And just to point out, we're about 98% of our 150 hectares is leased on the Hawke's Bay area. So as land values have gone up, we've seen our lease values significantly increase, which has meant we've had to focus on producing crops that will actually produce a return for us. So that sees a level of intensification to the way that we farm. By saying that, we've also just got to be mindful that we become more intensive. We've got to be careful that we're not over-farming our land. So ways that we've tried to mitigate that is, obviously, I pointed out, good management of our nutrient and water inputs, but also the integration of a good crop rotation as well. And also, it's a default for us is green manure crops as well. So we're looking after our soil. These green crops, I call them a green crop, they're good at capturing nutrients, they're good at holding on to moisture, improving our soil structure, improving our soil organic matter. These are all things that really help us to produce good quality crops, but also looking at the long-term sustainability of farming on the smaller amount of land that we've got available is key for us. We've got, with the significant pressure, it's also forcing us to the outside and onto classes of soil type that we typically haven't ventured to before. But if we want to continue to grow as a business, we want to stay sustainable and profitable, we're actually having to look further afield to grow. And that has put us onto some country that historically has been sheep and beef, or has typically been not so associated with vegetable farming. It also puts pressure on some of the resources that we may use as well, including water. So again, we're very, very conscious about what we've got available, how we use it, and ensuring that we're not depleting a resource. You know, we've been wanting to be very sustainable. Crop rotation is a really important part of it for us. And as I mentioned before, we've got quite an array of crops that we do grow from domestic supply, and we are predominantly a domestic supply. And by I mean domestic is that we supply leafy salad greens, we grow them all year round in Hawke's Bay. But that product will leave, you know, it'll go to Auckland, it goes to Palmerston North to be processed, but by tomorrow morning it's actually back here on our supermarket shelves. There's the turnaround time, the reliance on us to maintain quality year round is so important, and it's so important to my profitability and survival that we need those resources, and one of those resources is obviously water and irrigation to be able to make it work, especially in the heat of summer. Irrigation is such a key part of it. We need the water. We are very conscious that we need to apply it properly and carefully and at the right time, and we've really put a lot of focus into that. We also, as I mentioned before, need to manage the resources that we have, and including our soil and water. So that's where the other crops come into it, and they're all part of creating a rotation to look after the soil health, to reduce our pest and disease loading, but also our weed management as well. But it also gives us options to, depending on the seasons that we get, because each year is so different. And, you know, well, we had 3 inches of rain in the last 24 hours, you know, so it does change our mind as to what we do. You know, we're not set any one year as to one crop rotation. You know, it has to change. It has to suit what's ahead of us, what we can see in our crystal ball. So, you know, that's why we have the diversity there. So I guess I just really wanted to say, you know, as a grower, we're very focused on being as sustainable and very adaptive. We understand there's changes now, there's going to be changes to the future, but we're very, we want to be adaptable. We're happy to invest in being more compliant and better at what we do, and because we want to be here, for a long time into the future, and for my family as well. So, thank you.
Can I ask, the resource consents you have for irrigation, you don't actually own those, or?
I own one of those.
Yes,
one of them's in my company name, yeah.
So, given the fact that the majority of the land that you grow crops on is leased, that those consents belong with the owner of the land rather than you, in most cases?
Yeah, in most cases, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they're tied to the property.
Just wondering how that relationship works in terms of this plan change, for instance, and how that water is managed when you haven't got your hands on the consent as such.
Typically, as my experience of growing in Hawke's Bay, is that a lot of the landowners are quite standoff in regards to management of the irrigation consents. So they'll lease the land, and it might be for 3 years, it might be for 12 months. And generally those landowners will put that responsibility of managing and running that consent on the actual leasee for that period. Okay. And typically that means that the grower is also paying the costs of, and following the rules of that consent. Right. And
in terms of the leased land you use, what's a typical length of time for a lease agreement? Was it vary, or is it?
It does vary, but predominantly for vegetable production, you might see a 3-year term as a common one, but also we're seeing some very short-term leases now as well. And that's just purely because a lot of the landowners don't want to tie up their land to give them options, and certainly at the moment property values are quite high, so some of them are looking at it from a capital gains perspective and selling that property on. Others are seeing opportunities with other primary production and predominantly into fruit production in Hawke's Bay, where there's significant development at the moment. So there's higher returns and leases from that. It's very seldom that we can get over 3 to 5 years because people just don't want to tie their land up.
And in terms of farm plan or are you with NZ Gap or?
Yes, we are. Yep.
So, if your leased land is spread out over a wider area, does it all operate under one NZ Gap plan, or is it? How does that work?
The business and structure of how we undertake our farming is all under one. So the auditing of NZ Gap by our external auditor is looking at the processes and systems that we have in place. To date, they will look for examples of how we farm and how we undertake our day-to-day operations, how we record what we do. So it's not property specific. There are sections that look at are looking at management on those properties and identifying, but it's
Would your properties be spread out over multiple catchments or sub-catchments?
Yes, here we are at the moment. So we have some on the Heritonga Plains, we have some in the Ahuriri catchment, some in the Tudokuri catchment. So we do, we are spread, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
I just have one quick question. It's about the point you raised about pressure that you're under and that pressure is leading to people changing the land use from what might have been stock or other things to veggie growing. Talk to me about that. I mean, what's involved in it, and how long on average does it take to change land like that to a vegetable producing unit?
The changes from, say, a pastoral system to a vegetable system, depending on the situation, it can be reasonably quick.
Okay.
Within a 12-month time frame. The biggest thing is predominantly around water for irrigation.
Yeah.
Obviously there's no further allocations being put forward, so allowed. So land that hasn't got access to water for irrigation is dry land farming. So from our perspective, the risk that we take as a business significantly increases, and we will typically shy away from developing or going on to new land like that if we haven't got access to water for irrigation. Yeah.
Do you, I mean, if there are water consents already in place there, what happens to those?
Well, yeah, in regards to a change of condition, well, typically it'll be in communication with the Hawke's Bay Regional Council in that regard to see if it's actually fit for purpose or not, for what we're going to do.
And is there such a thing as a sort of an average size vegetable unit, a production unit, or whatever you want to call it?
Well, that's the big problem we've got, is that, roll back probably 10, 15 years ago, we had probably 10 hectare paddocks that we were working with. Now we're probably between 5 and 7 hectare paddocks. And traditionally what is happening is, and as I mentioned before, the lifestyle encroachment blocks that were 10 hectares have now been broken down into 5 hectare paddocks and sold off. And then we get these little pockets to actually try and farm in. And we've forgive me, we're getting the urban people moving into the rural landscape, and the significant pressure, no different to what's happening in Pukekohe. We've got massive pressure on us. People looking over the fence. It's eyes are on us all the time. So yeah, it's a real and significant issue for us.
Right. Good, thanks very much.
I had a question for you, perhaps and I think it's been answered in part, and I'm just reflecting on a number of the submissions we've heard during particularly week 2, and we'll hear this week around the business model the different sectors are using and some of the drivers. And we've heard a lot from submitters about responding to labour or labour shortages and changing the way crops are grown and the different varieties that are being used to help with facilitate use of technology and robotics. We've heard a lot about sales potential of different, and I'm picking apples just for the sake of it because I eat them every day, the different varieties of apples that are being grown to meet the markets and changes in consumer attitudes. And we've heard a lot about the costs and reducing costs of inputs, pesticides, herbicides and the like. And you've talked about land suitability, land availability. And it comes to water, and I'm just wanting to understand, outside of the resource consents and then programs like GAP, where does water fit in the business model for the growers? Because it's like land, it's a limited resource. It does come out of the sky, but only so much water comes out of the sky. It goes into the land and is available for use. So I just wanted to get a feel for where water fits in the business model moving forward.
It's critical, we will tailor our farming system and the crops we grow around water. And we can only use our historicals to kind of roughly know what Hawke's Bay is and what weather we're going to be delivered this summer. It's no problem today, but come January, February when the heat comes on, what typically happens for us, and it's about knowing our soils, knowing the environment or the microclimate that we're actually growing in, and what crops will actually fit those. And over the years and the trial and error, I guess, we now know what works and what doesn't, and what and what risk profile we're actually dealing with. Water is everything really in regards to it being a sustainable business here. Be it rain or be it irrigation, it's the key. We've got very, very good soils, good fertile soils. We can grow really good quality product, but if we've got no water, we can't do anything. And they die. Or we can't plant. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much to Gareth. We now have Mr. Scott Lawson. He'll address you briefly. I imagine he might have some thoughts on the questions that you've asked as well. And he's also at the back of Ms. Sands' evidence.
Is he speaking to his submission or the appendix to Ms. Sands?
I can speak to the appendix. Oh, no.
Oh,
Okay.
Both.
Welcome, Mr. Alden.
Morning, everyone.
Lawson, sorry.
Thank you. Thanks for the chance to speak today to the commissioners. I really appreciate that, and thank you for your time. And we're constrained, and just really want to ditto what Gareth has said as well too. I guess I'll take it as my submission, and as the evidence has been read there, I can pull a few points out of that that are quite pertinent and relevant to our discussion today as well, and a few new ones that come up as we go through there. So personally, my background, I was raised on a pip fruit and vegetable production property here. My father started as a land renting, and then we eventually managed to purchase a small property and grew our stuff from there as well too. So I've been the chair of the Vegetable Growers Association for quite some time, and now my focus is actually on wider community interests as well too. I've downsized my own business, and I'm spending more time in voluntary and in kind with the wider community and particularly vegetable growing and food production. So I've been involved with the tank discussions right from day one, and prior to that I was heavily involved with the Twyford water issues back in 2010 as well too. So Twyford in particular, the Robbery was where I grew up, and we had amazing springs and fishing in the streams and the rivers and everything there as well too. So that's my local turf as well. Really, our association is a group of family-owned businesses, and Gareth touched on that before as well too. The only exception to one of our members I could think of that's not a family-owned business is Heinz Waddy in Hastings. They grow some of their own crops to supplement their own factory intake in there. So the rest of us are totally family-owned businesses, albeit many of them are actually quite large in scale now, and they're tending to grow in scale, and many of the smaller growers are getting out, or merging in some way or other. So, and we're seeing land conglomeration and water consent conglomeration, etc., happening with that as well too. So that's really the background of where we're heading to. We have over 200 members in Hawke's Bay, and many of those members are small sheep and beef farmers as well too, that may grow a pea crop in their grass rotations for McCain's. Some are large scale, like Upatu farms growing 20-25% of New Zealand's onion production, as are Bostocks as well too. And so we have some big operators and very diverse operators, and all of us are diverse in some way or other, whether it's diverse on farm, in our smaller blocks growing different crops, or whether it's in our business units. Bostocks, brown rigs, Upatus, the big people like that, and the medium-sized growers like Gareth and other, they're very diversified in what they do, and they cover a wide range of land, areas, and people and skills are required, and a lot of input. We've seen a real increase in in-kind contribution from our growers. They realise they have to get off their farm, out of the businesses, and contribute more to the community discussions of tank, etc. And that leads into water user groups being established in different subcatchments, and sustainability research groups like Landwise as well too, which was started 12 or 15 years ago, one or the other, and that's really helped us manage our limited resources such as water, soils, nutrients, everything more sustainably as well. And that word sustainable is now moving more into the regenerative agricultural side, and you'll see McCain's of late have just made an international announcement that regenerative agriculture, for instance, is going to be the bottom line, it's the minimum bottom line for their businesses internationally. So that's coming across Hawke's Bay as well too. Personally, I'm involved in groups like the Hawke's Bay Future Farming Charitable Trust as well too. So many of us are out there doing good things as part of our community, and we are very focused on food security and growing quality, nutritious food. And some of the notes here that our members have see the availability of this irrigation water that's particularly relevant to talk about here as a privilege, not a right, as we're part of the community, needs to use this limited resource wisely. And we don't take that lightly. We're seeing changing times where consumer and community and central government expectations are placing pressure on growers, and we wish to be a part of the solution to managing our water resources here in Hawke's Bay. Some key issues for us have been obviously the quality of the water that we use and the water that leaves our properties as well. And at a subcatchment level, the Vegetable Growers Association are actively involved with our members of in-kind and cash going into projects, research projects all the time through our contributions from grower levies, but also direct contributions locally into projects such as what's coming out of our tile drains, which is a new project just initiating. So we're concerned about what goes on our land, what the water we use going on the land, and what nutrients and sediments and water that runs off the land as well too. So the quantity is a really important part. One is no greater than the other, be it quality or quantity, but as Gareth said, we can't farm without water. And whether that means a small bit of water at a small snapshot in time, or whether it's just the security of knowing we can access that water. Because we have to go to our banks and raise our seasonal finance, and we have to raise capital, etc. as well too. So that's very important to us. The flexibility of various crops, etc. As I mentioned, our members are very diverse in their use. They may be growing salads 1 minute, or onions or squash another minute, and then maize the next minute for their other integrated businesses as well too. And that maize goes out, and it's good crop rotation for us as vegetable growers. It goes out in 2 ways. We're the largest supplier in Hawke's Bay to the only New Zealand corn chip market, as an instance. So that's all food grade corn that gets used there, and also the stock feed gets used locally as well to the likes of Bostock's chickens and things. So the National Food Supply System was touched on a bit this morning as well too, and we are one and all. We like to call ourselves local growers, but we actually produce food primarily for the New Zealand market, and then the export growth as well too. So our food will go from here to the South Island, and from here to Auckland and Wellington, etc. And a lot of food comes into Hawke's Bay from Pukekohe, Horowhenua, areas like this as well too. And even from the South Island in at our off-season time. So we see our food supply system as being a national basis. We talk about being domestic growers. We can grow at a very small sub-catchment level, and the farmers market in Hawke's Bay is based upon that. But that's a limited market for limited growers. The majority of our food production is part of the national food supply. We've got issues that we wish to be part of, pressure such as the MPS coming on us. There's been a lot of grower investment in the NZ gap, and for us as suppliers to supermarkets, we have to be NZ gap certified before they'll take our product. And that's really important to us. So, and we're trying to encourage people that are operating at a smaller scale through the farmers market that they have those same rigorous controls in place, which will then give the consumers more, and the wider community actually more rigorous, what's the word I'm looking for, investment, and really focus on the good work that we're doing, recognition for that good work we're doing, I should say. Our crop cycles, we talked about those as well too. From a cauliflower grower, crop cycles can be way more than 12 months. It can be a lead-in of 18 months if you start talking about sourcing seed, land rotations before the crop, raising the seedlings, planting the cauliflower out, and then putting a crop back in afterwards as well too. So crop cycles can go from 18 months to a 30-day salad crop as well too. Some growers have the ability to take 2 or 3 crops from the same land area in the same year, but most people are working generally on 1 crop per annum, with the exception of some peas and sweet corn where we may choose to double crop that, or peas and beans across the summertime. But our growers really, as I'd just like to really have that important of saying, we're family-owned businesses and we live and breathe it, and we wish to be part of our community and be part of the solution. Thank you.
So, got any questions?
To what extent is crop rotation an essential part of your business? In other words, I know, if you grow potatoes for a year or two, you have to rest the land for a number of years. Does that apply similarly to a number of other crops? So you couldn't grow, say, onions for 5 years in a row on the same block?
It's paramount to our management plans that we put in place, and part of our global gap and NZ gap certification systems is showing your management plan how you're going to mitigate against getting, and we like to say we're proactive rather than reactive. So part of that is saying generally we talk about the same crop 1 in 5 years in the same area. So sometimes you could do a crop for 2 years in a row in the same area, but invariably if you keep doing the same thing, you're going to exaggerate the problems you have with the fungus or disease related to that crop, or for instance weed control for that crop, whether that be mechanical or herbicides or otherwise. You need a crop rotation to be sustainable in your vegetable production. Yeah.
Thank you.
We don't have any further questions, so thank you.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much, Commissioners, for your time, attention and questions. We really appreciate the engagement. That concludes the case of 14Z.
Thank you very much. Thanks for coming along.
Thank you very much.
Now, I understand we have Mr. Ordering. Welcome, Mr. Odering.
Mr. Odering.
Oh, Odering,
Yes.
sorry, Odering.
Odering, that's right, thank you. I've just got a PowerPoint presentation. Is that the... what I use
Excellent.
here, is it?
Oh,
Oh, here we are. Great.
and we've read your submission.
The original submission.
Yes.
Okay.
And
Thanks
I've
very
enjoyed-
much.
We didn't get very many PowerPoint presentations in our week. We had to sit there quietly listening to everything people said, so it's good seeing some pictures.
Well, I hope you don't fall asleep during it, but what I wanted to do today to the board here, to the commissioners, is to explain to you the uniqueness of the operation that we have here in the bay, and so just if you
It's a
could bear
nursery,
with-
as I understand.
It's a nursery.
Trees and shrubs?
Trees, shrubs, house plants, perennials, herbs,
Okay.
bedding plants, citrus, a wide variety
Wide variety.
of crops. This submission actually relates to the water take in the Heretaunga catchment where we operate the Hawke's Bay wholesale from Gimlet's Gravels, Hawke's Bay. My full name is Julian Russell Odering. I'm a fourth generation family business owner, director and property manager of Odering's Nurseries Christchurch Limited. This business was established in 1929, where we operate 2 nurseries and 5 garden centres in Christchurch. That's the operation that we have in Christchurch, and I'm placing it up there because I'll explain something about it later on. But what we're doing there is what we're assimilating up in the Hawke's Bay, with the same sort of crops that we grow up there. But being a family business, in a strategic meeting in 2016, the next generation, the 5th generation, expressed a desire to expand the garden centre business further into the North Island, namely Auckland and Wellington, to complement the 2 existing shops in the Hawke's Bay and Palmerston North. Now,
Just on that picture,
oh yeah, yeah.
when this was first established in 1929, was it all farmland there? Now it's...
It was all farmland, correct.
Now it's surrounded by-
And interestingly enough, it's 5 minutes from the city centre,
Yeah.
and it's in the area of Spraydon, Cashmere. And that's all under utilisation. You can see that there's a retail to the top there, and the nursery is at the bottom.
Yep.
You have to excuse me if some of these aren't in order. Oh, it stopped. Oh, here we are. This is Gimlet's, or Hawke's Bay Wholesale, as we call it now. This is a photo that was taken about a year ago, Daniel. I'd like to introduce Daniel, my nephew too, sorry. This is Daniel. He's our operations manager up there, production manager, and also he's overseeing the building. As you can see, it's unique in as far as this work has been done since 2018. You can see Flaxmere, is that Flaxmere at the back there, Daniel? Yep. And so it's very, very close to Napier. And as you can see, it started off with production sheds, some greenhouses, and I'll go through that as we go. Here's some of our container grown product after the rains, of course. These are trees and shrubs that are grown for our North Island branches, and we have the 2 in Havelock North, one in Havelock North rather, which is on the left of the picture, and the other one is in Napier. That's in Pakawai Road. And all those pots that you see there, the blue ones or the aqua ones, are all grown by ourselves. We estimate we're growing 65 to 70% of our own trees and shrubs from some of it's supplied from Christchurch at the moment, but later on it will all be supplied from Hawke's Bay Wholesale. There we are. That's the nursery, the garden centre in Palmerston North, which was formerly a nursery, and we moved the growing operation from there to Hawke's Bay Wholesale. Before Hawke's Bay Wholesale came along, there's the nursery on the right-hand side, on the left of the picture. You see the nursery there, and that supplied Palmerston North and the rest of our garden centres in the bay. And on the right-hand side, you see formerly Anderson's nursery. That was that we took that over as well because Havelock North got too small for our purpose, and a lot of the old greenhouses were dilapidated. Then in 2018, this is Gimlet Gravels, which was owned by the world's best little wine company. And we purchased it because of the bay's sunshine hours, renowned water quality and microclimate that allows a wide variety of plants to thrive in conditions from -3 degrees to 38 degrees, and probably even hotter than that sometimes. The good thing about the Hawke's Bay is it's central to the North Island garden store destinations, meaning a smaller carbon footprint for climate change. And my nephew Daniel, who's right here, he's lived in the bay for 20 years in those nurseries supporting the garden centres. Here's some of the greenhouses that were pulled down from Havelock North and Napier, and they've been reinstated in Hawke's Bay Wholesale. He's also got a dog in there which keeps the place pretty free of rabbits as well, because we get a few rabbits coming through. Largely everything that's grown is grown on pallets, but everything is in containers. Here's more tree and shrub production. Polyanthus, a lot of polyanthus and flowering kale, a lot of ornamental crops. We start this time of year, doing spring growing crops such as ornamentals, such as bedding plants, herbs, perennials, and so on. There's a wide range of product grown that way. And because of our growing experience in the Hawke's Bay, we can pick up employees from a wide horticultural background and still retain our workforce from our older nurseries. Our work colleagues are our greatest asset, and we've got a lot of them that have come with us. We've got a really good team there. As you can see, these reassembled houses were actually put up and stored by the people that we brought from our other places. Oatwings is considered a medium-sized business, with Hawke's Bay Wholesale alone employing 31 full-time staff. Being a labour-intensive industry, that number expands to 56 at peak seasonal times. And importantly, peak times for us, spring and early autumn, mesh well with crop picking in summer and autumn for the fixed-term employees that we employ over that time. Here's where we do our own soil mixing. It's pretty messy, Daniel. Oops, don't look at that too much. Our production shed where we transplant all our growing on lines or smaller plants into larger containers such as packs, punnets, larger pots. And here's some of our shrubs in containers as well. All these, that aqua pot is our own pot. So if you come to our garden centres, you see those are all grown by ourselves in the Hawke's Bay Wholesale. These containers have an open soilless media, and an open soilless media is a bark-based type media, peat as well. We put peat in there to retain moisture. We put the bark in there to add drainage. They all come with their own fertiliser regime, and in my original submission I said that we use controlled release fertilisers, which is an NPK food, which is within a plastic coating which releases to the plant as it needs it. In the winter time when they don't need so much, that pool closes up. In the summertime when the plant needs it more, it opens up. So we try to control as much as we can our nutrient regime, so we get the maximum amount of usage out of the fertiliser without leaching too much. Excuse me a second. But unfortunately, they have fortunately or unfortunately, they have holes to drain excess moisture, which means they need watering more often. But all the water that goes through them gets leached back into the gravels. And of course, Gimlet Gravels Aquifer offers exceptionally good water quality, absolutely essential for ornamental production. Furthermore, lines that are grown are susceptible to waterborne root rots. We use pure water from the aquifer, and for the others we use a reservoir that we put in early in the development of the nursery. There's just a few more on the nursery. Oh, I digress a wee bit. This is actually the nursery in Barrington Street, and I'm just trying to get an idea. Actually, no, that one's not. But the nursery in Barrington Street, this greenhouse here is where we do all our perennial production. That is only 1/3 of the size of the new house that's going in. There's another one of gimlets. Sorry, some of these aren't in order. Sorry, folks. There's house plants that we're growing as well in Christchurch, but they will be grown in Hawke's Bay as well, at Hawke's Bay Wholesale. Some of our strawberry production, we grow a lot of edible crops, such as, I showed you a picture before of citrus, strawberries, vegetable plants, some fruit trees. We grow a lot of edible crops as well for our customers. Alone, we're growing 70,000 strawberries for the spring sales. Here's some of our vegetable plants, which are very, very popular in the springtime. In fact, all year round, we grow veggies for people's gardens. Here's some of the plug trays that the veggies start in, and before they're pricked out into punnets. Here's the greenhouse in Christchurch. Now that house there is 2,200 square metres. When we do the greenhouse that we're doing in Hawke's Bay wholesale, it's going to be 3 times that size. Earlier in the piece, we put this reservoir in. This reservoir holds 2.5 million litres of water, and all the water that runs off the production sheds and some of the other roofs runs straight into that. So we're trying as much as we can to save our water usage. At the moment, we've got a water usage for only 4 litres a second, and that is going to run out very soon. So we've applied to sink a new bore this spring, which will go ahead. We maintain we need double that, at least, in water take coming into the future. So the Hawke's Bay wholesale, there's the new Cravo house that's going up, which is 7,500 square metres. We want eventually to grow what we grow in Christchurch up here in the North Island in Hawke's Bay wholesale. Of house plants alone, we've got 128 varieties, herbs 76 varieties, citrus 8 varieties, perennials 78 varieties, vegetables and seedlings 43 varieties, and bedding annuals 300 varieties. So we estimate we're going to need that, and that would just about bring it to 3/4 of its completion. It's envisaged when the construction of the nursery is complete, Odering's Hawke's Bay wholesale will supply all our North Island garden centres and occasionally some of the South Island garden centres like it is now. As I said, currently Hawke's Bay wholesale has a water consent for bore number 3881 of 4 litres per second from a 150 millimetre well. This bore was drilled in May 2004 and had no meter attached. When we purchased the property in 2018, that bore was about to expire on the 31st of May 2019. So I applied for a consent to drill a 200 millimetre bore this spring. Once drilled, I wish to attach the old water take to the new bore. I have had some discussions with some of the regional council people here, and one of the ladies I spoke to said that there's no way, if you can't prove you are taking 4 litres a second, they want to reduce that flow, and that is unacceptable to us. We just cannot take any less water than what we're taking now, because that bore had no meter, and when we purchased the place, it was about to expire. So we've been sort of caught in limbo a wee bit with that. There's another one of the Cravo house that's going up, just to show you the scope and size of it. Oh, what happened there? Oh, I don't know what's happened there, never mind. I'll bring this up again because just the only records that I have got is what we had in Barrington Street when we had the earthquakes in 2010 in September. The infrastructure damage to the water was so severe. We have a 80 millimetre water pipe which supplies town supply water into the nursery. That was disrupted, so we put an emergency bore in at that time and a 33,000 litre tank. And when the February earthquakes hit, that was the amount of water we were going through in this nursery here. And this nursery is only 3.5 hectares. So we were going through 33,000 litres a day in the summertime in February. We were pumping it from the well into a 33,000 litre tank, and that's this consumption we used. So that's why I say 4 litres a second is virtually not enough for this operation. Excuse me. We maintain we need twice the volume, as I said, because water is the lifeblood of our business. Without it, we can't survive. The plants can't survive, and they'll wither up on the vine, as you know. So Oderings to date has spent over $4 million establishing Hawke's Bay wholesale on the site, and we're fully committed to growing it on that site. I'd like to thank you for hearing my submission on this. It's really appreciated being offered to talk here today.
Thank you, Mr. Odering. We'll see if we've got any questions.
One question around, you mentioned in your written discussion here about the Gimlet Gravels Aquifer offers exceptional good water quality, which is essential for your operation.
Correct.
How are you defining good water quality? I mean,
Oh, good question.
because we talk about contaminated water or water rich in nutrients as not being good, but I presume that would be an advantage.
What I actually mean by
irrigation.
that is because of the uniqueness of our operation, we grow a lot of annuals, tender annuals that are susceptible to root rots. And that reservoir that we have there, that is used for watering trees and shrubs and bigger plants which are less susceptible, but the pure water underneath is used for our seedlings, which are very susceptible at a young stage to Pythium, Phytophthora, Rhizoctonius, Sclerotinia, all those sort of waterborne sort of diseases and that's why we use the bore water for watering our tender seedlings and the reservoir water for watering our larger trees and shrubs, which are less susceptible.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does, thank you. No questions, thanks.
I just had a couple of questions. Here we go. You've mentioned how the property you've taken over doesn't have a meter. Didn't have a meter. Does it have a meter now?
No, it doesn't, because the thing is, it was about to expire the year after we got it.
Yes.
And the advice that we were given is that, apply for a new well and it'll go on the new well. And because being the new guys on the block, of course, we only just heard about the tank hearings just as we took the place on. So, no, it didn't have it was put in 2004, the old bore, and it didn't have a meter on it then. And, yeah, we're quite happy to meter the new bore, but
Okay.
it feels to me like we've been sort of a bit caught out with that, that's all.
This is probably a more question for the council, just around, you've heard Mr Odering in terms of, I'm assuming you're wanting 8 litres a second, that's twice as much.
Well, I sort of envisage that, based on the knowledge and the experience we've had when we've run out of water in our own other places.
Yeah, so I suppose it'd be interesting to know how that fits or doesn't fit with the actual reasonable as we've currently got before us that we're considering. Yeah, just a question. Thank you, Mr Odering. We don't have any more further questions, but thank you very much.
Is that all? Okay, thank you very much for hearing me again.
And thank you for the presentation, that made it really
And
clear.
thank you for not going to sleep.
We're wide awake.
Good on you.
Okay. We've got a short break and then we're back at 12:20 for irrigation services. Adrian Mannering at 12:20.
Are you ready?
Unless you're here already?
With the Mangoni catchment group.
Oh, okay. Well, let's have it. I'll just check in with Nicola. Where are we up to? I've got 12:20 irrigation services and 12:40 Whitewater New Zealand. Okay. And sorry, and you gentlemen were with?
Mangoni catchment group.
We don't have them on the schedule, I'm not too quite just yet, but.
Were you expecting to do a presentation this morning?
Yes.
Well, we're here and you're here.
Why not?
Do we have a submission number?
239,
239, was it?
is it? That's the old one. It's the same one.
No, I don't think that's it.
239, yeah.
It is 239.
Yeah,
Penny and John Reynolds.
239.
yeah.
Aye.
Mangoni catchment group.
Yep.
Oh, Mangoni.
Hmm. They were supposed to come, I think, a week or so ago.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay. That's fine. Well, sorry about the misunderstanding, miscommunication.
That's all right.
We've got your submission in front of us. Now, how did you want to present to us? Is it going to be a bit of a tag team or?
Well, I think we just want to introduce ourselves and talk about our catchment and talk about our submission.
Right.
And then I've got my colleagues to help me out if there's any questions.
Okay, thank you.
But do you need 5 minutes to just read through our submission?
We've already read through all the submissions.
Yeah.
There's a couple of thousand of them, but it took us a little while. So as you're speaking, it'll remind us about the submissions, so that'll be great. Do a little bit of a summary for us.
Okay, so my name's Richard Beetham. I'm the chairperson of the Mangoni River Catchment Group. Today we've got committee members Callum Thompson, who's a third generation farmer from Pātoka, and also an agricultural contractor in the district, and Ben Absalom, who's a fourth generation sheep and beef farmer at Risington. The Mangoni Catchment Group is a newly formed group covering around 22,000 hectares, just to the northwest of Napier. I'm going to briefly outline our purpose of our catchment group. There's a bit of a background. The primary objective of the society is to champion environmental continuous improvement across the catchment and influence behavioural change to align with this objective. We also wanted to work with the Hawke's Bay Regional Council Tank project, which is set out to deliver sustainable outcomes through a management framework that demonstrates economic growth and environmental integrity for our members. Purposes of the society also were to include to encourage farmers to develop, adopt and share new and innovative technology, ideas, farm management practices and reporting that will lead to improved sustainability, water and air quality and farm profitability amongst the members. So that was our initial, that's our rules for our members and what they sort of sign up when they become part of our group. So where are we at as a catchment group? As I said, we're newly formed and we have a good support from the majority of our landowners. That being said, it has been a challenging time for many of our landowners in our catchment with time and financial pressure, issues created by 3 autumn droughts, a TB outbreak and COVID. For some of our farmers, they've been dealing with these issues all at the same time and it has been extremely stressful. This in some respects has impacted our momentum as a group. However, in recent times we've made positive inroads towards our objectives. So the catchment is on a journey. We started off wanting to manage our own destiny, to know our data and to make changes based on evidence. This has not changed. The group is made up of landowners with diverse operations and systems. We have dairy farmers, regenerative farmers, beef and lamb finishing, stud breeders, feed efficiency testing operator, forestry, and all with different personalities and opinions. We're a small version of Tank, all trying to move in a positive direction. The Mangoni Catchment Group has had good support from the Hawke's Bay Regional Council, and recently we've initiated a data sharing between the council and the catchment through a secure system. This is a test bed where we can use high resolution mapping system to collect data for pest control within the catchment to aid a coordinated approach. This will be a great asset in our fight against TB within the catchment. This is an example of how our catchment can work with the Regional Council and also could be the methodology to implement Schedule 30. The Mangoni Catchment Group aims to know our baseline environmental data, prove and promote our position with live data. And a high-resolution platform such as MyEnviro will be the key to managing live data in this space. To know our position, the catchment needs to know the baseline data for the current state of the river. It is our intention to have an accurate real-time data set. And to do this, the Mangoni catchment has recently established a relationship with Eco Detection, who are willing to sponsor to install a water monitoring system. A member of our catchment group has also contributed substantial funding to help us monitor the river. This monitoring system, although not installed yet, but we're hoping in the very near future, will take up to 4 measurements per day, enabling a better understanding of the river and an evidence approach to land use management. This will be the key tool to achieve our catchment objective of continuous improvement. With our diverse range of farming operations and forestry, we're in a unique position as a test bed for a catchment-wide analysis of farming operations, including environmental and financial data. This has been recognised by the Hawke's Bay Future Farming Charitable Trust, who have seen the benefits of our society and have been willing to co-submit to MPI on a funding application. This process is continuing. They can see that the catchment has the potential to be an excellent field lab for studies such as soil carbon sequestration, regenerative agriculture versus traditional, benefits of riparian planting, and farm max performance analysis, for examples. The catchment is also now part of a national-wide forum headed by Jim Sinner from the Cawthorn Institute, studying the social and community benefits of catchment groups. So tank changes. We operate on a volunteer basis and have limited time and resource to allocate to this process. And such, we have focused specifically on our points raised in our submission, and we do wish to discuss Schedule 30, land use change, water takes and sediment loss. These are key issues for our group. Our submission requested support for catchment collectives within TANK, and we are pleased to see catchment governments supported in Plan Change 9, specifically Schedule 30. Schedule 30. The catchment aim is to have a catchment scale farm environmental plan on one high resolution platform. In general, we support for the most part Schedule 30, however we have concerns around resource and funding the objectives as a group. This was highlighted in our submission that although we agree with catchment governance, catchment group governance, it should not be a cheap administrative fix with some complex issues. As we stated in our submission, catchments will need support for securing information and administration support. Work needs to be completed to understand the cost and staffing requirements to achieve the objectives of Schedule 30. Stock exclusion. It is our understanding that Plan Change 9 amended changes that stock exclusion policy 22 has been deleted and that our submission relief has been met. Water take. We understand that the changes within Appendix 1A of the amended changes for Plan Change 9, for water takes in particular, ensures properties can take water for reasonable domestic needs and stock water within the prescribed limits. This will also meet our relief sought as per our submission for surface water takes. Land use change. Our submission sought the deletion of the limitation for 10% land use change. Now it appears to be a change in land use over more than 10 hectares. For the majority of farms in our catchment, this is a small percentage of their land and seems an arbitrary figure. The Mangoni Catchment Group is concerned that the regulatory requirements will be inefficient, inflexible and possibly expensive. An example of this is that after 3 autumn droughts in a row, farmers are already changing policies to meet the changing environment. There must be more flexibility in the system. The documentation seems unclear regarding controlled and discretionary restricted land use change and what the implications are for the catchment management for land use change as detailed in Schedule 30. We need it detailed in more layman terms, specifically page 41 and 42, Tank 5 and 6 of recommended changes of Plan Change 9. Sediment management. This is a priority for our catchment, and we champion the majority of POL Tank 20. However, we have some concerns regarding regulating cultivation. High elevation farmers in our catchment rely on winter forage crops, such as kale and swedes, which are eaten in situ. What does regulating in the plan actually entail? We need more detail or direction on where to find this information. Our last item from our submission is monitoring. Our request was for Hawke's Bay Regional Council to work with the catchment groups to develop monitoring systems and programs. Specifically, we will need financial support to help with items such as high resolution monitoring systems. Finally, we look forward to fostering a strong working and collaborative approach with Hawke's Bay Regional Council and continuing the journey as a catchment to be a positive contributor of TANK. Thank you.
Thank you very much. See if we've got any questions.
Thank you for that. You talked about eco-detection. So is that some sort of proprietary sort of monitoring device?
There's various companies out there that are putting forward software for automated water monitoring systems, and that's one that we've been in contact with.
So you're looking to progress that, or is it just a sort of possible option?
No, they've come to the party and I said, well, we'll put up $67,000 worth and install a sensor for you, because they see the benefits, and that's just one sensor. So we're really trying to find sponsorship currently for another sensor, so one at the top of the river and one at the bottom, and then we can compare the difference. There is other companies, but it's such a new technology space that it's quite often it's hard to when companies promise one thing and then delivery is different. You've got to sometimes it's so new that they're trying to catch up to.
And what would the sensors be monitoring?
Well, pathogens and nutrients and clarity, and we're trying to get the all singing and dancing one.
Sounds like it.
And that 67,000 buys us about 6 months worth of data, and then the second 6 months we've funded through another source.
Okay.
So yeah, we're not necessarily we don't necessarily want to own the machine. We just want to purchase the data because the technology is changing so fast. We don't want to pour a whole lot of money into owning an asset which is going to be outdated in 6 months' time. So that's why we just really want to buy the data.
If comparably at the moment, the council are testing once a month on our river. So today's a prime example. We're on the back of an extended dry autumn. Comparably, the council mightn't be out there for another 3 weeks to test. If we're having testing going on 4 times a day, we'll be able to really micromanage our river a hell of a lot better with cause and effect. And we'll have the ability within our 20,000, 22,000 hectares to know rainfalls at different parts of the catchment. So we can really start to understand all the different components, whether it be forestry, sheep and beef, dairy, all the cause and effects if something's going on within our catchment. And I think that's, from a council perspective, hugely valuable and also for us farmers to start to micromanage what's going on.
Thank you.
How much of we've got the map here in your submission, and it's got 22,500 hectares, but is that all of that land is within the catchment group?
Yes.
Catchment group, is it? Okay, thank you.
And can I ask a similar question? Presumably it's the Mangone's the stream that comes in on the left bank near Dartmoor of the Tutukuri.
Yes.
So is it the whole catchment or is it the upper catchment where the catchment group operates? I can't tell from your map.
It's most of the river of the Mangone all the way down to the Tutukuri.
To where it reaches the Tutukuri.
To where it meets, yeah.
So
There's obviously, there's a few little farmers that, might not be part of our catchment group, but, we're hoping.
Some farms flow into other
Yeah,
catchments as
yeah.
well, so there's a bit of, they will be picked up in other catchment groups.
So it wouldn't include the very bottom end of the catchment where you've got the grape growers and so forth, where it comes down out of the hills there? Or?
On the right-hand side, the Yules, they are part of the catchment group. They haven't got vineyards. The farm further north from that has got some vineyards in it. They are included in it. And we're at the bottom end on the northern side of the catchment, which is the Brisington station. So yes, we do come right to the bottom end.
So what would be the altitude range within the catchment broadly, and what would be the variation in rainfall from top to bottom, if you like?
It'd be sea level to probably 2,500 feet, and probably goes from, what's the rainfall down here?
Oh, we're about 1,000 at Brisington.
Probably to
annually?
1,800. Yeah. It does include the 3 main tributaries right at the top as well.
Okay, thank you.
My other question I had, and it might be a difficult one to answer, you'd said, talked about Cyclone Bowler, and there have been, as a result of that, significant erosion up in the upper catchment. And I just wonder if you're aware of whether there were high sediment loads pre-Bowler. The name of the river suggests that it's a sandy river.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering if that's a natural phenomenon exacerbated by the cyclone.
Well, there is a photo in that submission, and you can see that the cliffs there.
Yes.
That's at the bottom of my farm. That particular photo, and on my particular farm, there's been 2 generations of farmers who've fenced off all the gorges and planted all the creeks. So, to answer your question, no, I can't answer what happened before Cyclone Bowler, but I do know that there was a lot of fencing went on afterwards to help protect the river, and the catchment does have a river which is generally fenced off. I mean, there's tributaries and more riparian planting we can do, which is part of our continuous improvement.
Yeah.
But for the majority, for instance, example, my farm, there's 60 hectares of gorge, which is all fenced off, and it's been like that for a long time.
So it has always been an issue. So there's been, 2 generations before us that have, put a lot of work into it as well. A lot of work with the catchment board, with planting, space planting, recognising areas that need taking out for production forestry, and then retiring land, riparian planting. So we're talking about sort of tweaking really, as opposed to, like, a lot of grunt work has been done in the past.
Thank you. Did you have any questions?
How long is this river?
I'll come back to you. I could do a Google Earth quickly, but
Must be about 25 k's.
25 k's?
About 25, yeah. And I take it that you have to be a farmer to belong to the group, right?
no.
Anybody can.
Associated members,
Okay.
lifestyle members.
We've actually, interestingly enough, got family groups from Auckland and Wellington that have become members because they feel that that's part of their heritage.
All right.
So yeah, it's quite interesting, a wide ranging of people
Yeah.
have felt part of it.
Forestry is strongly involved as well.
And the group pretty much funds itself.
Correct, at the moment.
At the moment, we the members pay subs, so that can run the administration of the group, but that's only enough to basically administer the group. It's not enough to run projects. So we seek other funding for project work.
And dumb question, but how well do you think you're doing in caring for the river?
Well, I think, I think we're in the actual river condition is actually pretty good compared to other rivers, but that doesn't mean we can't get better. And I think that is because we've had generations of farmers doing the right thing. So as a catchment group, we can see the benefits of our past and what our past farmers have done, but we want to take it to the next level and work more collectively to analyse what happens on farm, see the effects in the river, and then make changes based on real data. So if you can see that I'm cropping this paddock and I've done a soil map and I know what the soil is, and then I can see that I shouldn't be cropping that flat paddock near the river or on the top terrace, because I've now measured the paddock scale soil mapping, and then I can make a proper decision about what I put in that paddock, and that should be reflected in what we see in the river. But without that real data, we can't make those on-farm management decisions on land use. So that's why we want to learn about the river, measure the data, own the data, and then make management decisions based on real evidence.
The other component I'd add to that is that seems to be today we're using a lot of models to create the data that we're making decisions based off. What we believe where we as farmers can add real value is actually adding real-time numbers that go in the bottom of these data sets, which allows people in your position to make better decisions based off a community, big picture, long-term effect. And I think, what we're finding today is that there's changes are happening real time so quickly, and it's not necessarily based off what I would call good data. It's based off models that are not necessarily that accurate, and I think that's the scary part for us as farmers. So we're really keen to work on trying to get real-time data that can go into the baseline of these models, which is going to help make better decisions.
Thank you. I don't think we had any further, we might have a further question.
Just what's the underlying base rock in the catchment? Is it mostly mudstone or sandstone? Is it overlying old marine deposits?
Yeah, we call it a sandstone.
Yeah, it's a sandstone. It does range right from the top to the bottom though. There's 18 different soil types on my farm.
Okay, but you've got some almost papa-looking stuff in that photo. Is that,
Yeah, it is.
So that'll be old mudstone.
Correct.
Underlying it.
Yep.
So the gullies in the catchment are quite deeply incised?
Yes.
Yep.
Right through the whole
Yep.
catchment.
Very narrow and deep.
Okay, thank you very much.
Well, we'll look forward to flying over the property on Friday, so don't shoot us, we're on official business. Some of the areas we've been asked to go and visit, but there's no roads there, and we don't want to bother people with sorting out fences and gates and things. So we'll be flying past on Saturday. Give us a wave.
We could give you a couple of spots to drop in
Or
for
Friday,
a coffee,
sorry,
if
Friday.
a coffee if you do really want to. More than welcome.
Thank you very much for the offer. Hey, thanks very much for coming in.
Okay, thanks for hearing us.
Mr. Ordering, I did have a question for you that I didn't ask you, and I wouldn't mind. It'll probably only take you a few seconds. It was just about how you're doing the watering at the nurseries here in Hawke's Bay at the moment. Are they overhead water?
It's mostly hand watering, and there is, and that's one thing it's on my submission, but I left out, and that is because of the amount of plant trees that we're growing. We're going to be putting whisker dripper in there once the nursery's finished. But a lot of it is, most of it is hand watering at the moment, and also some sprinkler irrigation.
Saw those, yeah. Okay, thank you. That was all.
Thanks.
Okay. Let's stretch our legs, eh? So this is submission number 218, irrigation services. And
But we've
we've
also
been
got a
given a
Today
copy of the
presentation.
submission here. And we'll just bring up your original submission as well. Our panel's been laughing. We've been trying this thing to be paperless, whatever that is. And one of the some of the disadvantages is one trying to find things, because it does rely on you filing things in the places they're supposed to, but we end up with piles of paper anyway. So we're thinking we might have to set up a program where we plant some trees. Each day of hearing requires 10 trees to be planted on it. Welcome, Mr. Mannering.
Yeah, sorry,
No, that's okay. That's not even one tree.
I'm Adrian Mannering of Irrigation Services, a family-owned and operated business. My wife, Rose, and I completed a Bachelor of Hort Science and Agricultural Science and Engineering at Massey.
Did you both do it together?
Yes.
And that's how you met?
Correct. Yeah. Irrigation Services specialised in orchard and vineyard irrigation systems to horticulture since 1995. We've also completed a number of civil community wastewater schemes, Mahia, Foxton, Shannon and others on a design-build basis. Irrigation Services Orchards, separate again, operates 92 hectares effective of orchard on the Haratonga Plains in Tukituk, Lawn Road, St George's Road and Waipatu. I'm also on the board of Pickhawks Bay. It's a labour cooperative for small to medium non-corporate growers. Our orchards are, we've initiated stream and waterway plantings with the Tukituk Plan Change 6, Farm Environmental Management Plan. We've also planted the Auhau stream which runs through our St George's Road orchard. Yeah, as well as that, we have IS dam lining. It's been operating since 2011. We're a medium-sized installer of HDPE lining in New Zealand for storage and containment ponds. We carry out lining of farm dairy effluent ponds from Southland to the Waikato. Our farm dairy effluent accreditation enable us to calculate the pond size we required. We also install liner on numerous water storage dams in the Marlborough area as a subcontractor. In Hawke's Bay, we operate as a subcontractor or main contractor and can often be involved with the storage calculation. We currently employ 44 permanent and up to 90 seasonal staff in the peak. Our experience comes from engineering and a grower base, not a hydraulical base.
Mr. Mannering, just a matter of clarification, just want to clarify who the submission's on behalf of. So we've currently got Irrigation Services Orchard, which is the Irrigation Services Orchards Limited, is that right? The 92 hectares of?
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
But the whole lot's what is Mannering Family Trust.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. All the companies. The specific areas I wish to comment on are point 52B, C, G on pages 31 and 32 and 56 C, G, pages 34. I support the framework of Plan Change 9, reflecting a staged approach to improving the management of the tank catchment freshwater resources. Adding to that, orcharding has a significant risk inherent with the growing cycle, in particular hail, frost, water stress and labour in the current season and going forward. Having a number of geographically spread growing areas has been utilised by larger growers to mitigate risk. The inherent risk is even greater for smaller growers and their staff. Surety of water is yet another major risk. Water strategies to mitigate climate risk are key. Irrigation Services supports the phase out of over allocation, Plan Change 9.52 E and G. Presently, all our growers have either targeted micro-sprinkler irrigation on conventional growing trees or targeted micro-sprinkler or drip irrigation on newly 2D intensive plantings. All the vineyard irrigation is drip irrigation. These systems have a uniformity of application of 85% or greater. We have not seen a travelling irrigator or shift pipe system for many years. Current control systems are very precise with alarm and fault recording in real time. Water use is very efficient with little wastage or chance for error. When faults or breaks occur, growers are notified via an app on their phone. In general, the irrigation efficiency in fixed crop systems is very good and has been good for a number of years. Actual reasonable use based on maximum annual amount used in the preceding 10 years is acceptable, and or IRRICALC gives adequate security to the grower in the short term, but is needed in conjunction with a flexible approach to management. Just of interest, the dairy NZ model for calculating FDE pond storage size is based on the 30-year climate data. A 10-year maximum figure may not give certainty to mitigate risk. Where possible, I support basing the maximum annual water use in 1 year over the longest period of time depending on data sets available. Going forward, environmental and community is first and foremost, point 52 E and G. Reducing over-allocation and developing flexible approaches to management and use of allocatable water will be key. We acknowledge the importance of flushing flows for freshwater environment. Now, for the smaller grower, the use of allocatable water within a management zone and user group may be key. Storage for smaller growers is difficult to the footprint. See attachment. There's a footprint of what you would require for a 12-hectare orchard to mitigate risk over a 40-day shutdown period. So you see the size of the dam is 90 metre by 90 metre. So it's basically taking out at least a hectare of your orchard. For the larger grower, storage is an option for climate resilience. A good example of this in practice can be seen in Marlborough. In the last 5 years, ISDM Lining has completed 26 larger storage ponds in Marlborough, on an average of size of 72 megalitre. You see some shots of those, a typical sort of dam. Compare this to Hawke's Bay's, in the last 20 years, a total of 7 ponds in total installed for horticultural purposes. Obviously, they were not all ISDM Lining jobs since we only started in 2011. Question, have any studies been done on the quality of the water flow at flows above 20 cube per second? Is it suitable to be taken for storage? We support the council carrying out further investigation as stated in point 57, while recognising the beneficial effects of water storage and augmentation schemes. The high flow take criteria is key to filling the storage ponds for climate resilience. From an engineering perspective, if the high flow take is set too high, the take can become non-viable due to water quality and infrastructure reasons, i.e. high river flushing flow rates. Setting of high flow take rates vary depending on the catchment, which the hydrologists are expert at, but do need to seriously consider engineering aspects. We note Tank 13 supports the construction of dams for the off-peak water storage and note the building consent is required above 4 metres in height.
You've got some images at the back. Do you want to just explain those to us?
Yeah, so that's just some typical dams in the Marlborough region so the Pyramid Dam 1, and they're both dams of about 70 megalitre, which is probably equivalent at having managing a shutdown period for a 80 or 90 hectare vineyard. Yeah. And then there's the other two figures are just the stages of construction, before lining and after lining. So it's just information for you. Yeah, yep.
In terms of your comments there about high flow takes and your concerns about water quality, is that specifically at the sediment, high sediment levels?
Yes, yeah.
Right. And infrastructure, I guess, you need more gruntier infrastructure if you're trying to take during floods. But what about likes of gallery intakes and things like that?
Yeah, and gallery intakes are, they will need work every maybe half dozen years, or depending on how the river behaves, and also if it's mobile gear or it's even the mobile gear, there'll be some infrastructure in the creek which is vulnerable as well, so it needs to be movable.
The gallery intakes relatively common on these Hawke's Bay?
They're very common in Marlborough, not so common here.
Is there any reason for that?
The expertise, so there's some good gallery builders in Marlborough. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
They are quite technically challenging. Yeah.
Why would someone want to line these? I mean, I'm assuming there are ponds out there that aren't lined?
Yes.
Yeah.
A good question. As the water becomes more valuable, you line it, and it guarantees that value. So, so depending on the value of the crop, generally this is how the grower approaches it. So a farmer may not line, because he say, I'm only using it for stock water. But from the other one is, there's a good example for farm dairy effluent, to get the equivalent sealing ability as a HDPE liner, you need a metre of very good clay.
Really?
And it needs to be engineered correctly to get the equivalent amount of seal. Yeah. So hence, all the dairy farm effluent ponds, they can be clay lined, but 95% of them would be HDPE lined to guarantee that they're not going to get leachate. And likewise with water storage, yes, if you've got a valuable crop and you don't want to lose it, well, if I HDPE line, I've done the job to the best of ability.
And do you manufacture the lining yourself?
No,
You don't?
the liner is all imported. Yeah.
Is it made locally in New Zealand or?
No, there's a number of factories around the world.
Okay.
Yeah. The liner is very common in landfill, is that we do a number of landfill sites. And same again, that you can guarantee the sealing ability and the engineering of it, and that's why the civil engineers love it, and underneath the landfill. Yeah.
Okay, thanks very much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Henry.
Okay.
We have Kev England, Whitewater, New Zealand. Oh, very good.
He's on Zoom, isn't he?
Submission number 237.
I think yes, this is a fellow who's on Zoom.
They were in my mind, and I think
We're 4 minutes early.
one is for groundwater, right? Yeah. They bought it from 48 feet of their dairy, and they didn't see the bloody pond. It's just crazy. And so he had to take all the stuff out and seal it. Even then, I understand it didn't work, that he did it poor job sealing it. I know the holes. Yeah, I know. It's just a cow. The real reason we're ready to proceed with the project, obviously, so we get some water in the canals. So hasn't Genesis been a fortune on the canals, relining those? Yeah, oh yes, yeah, the whole because again, they were just leaking into the ground. Good for the ground.